Welcome back to Leading the Way. I'm Jessica Partnow, your guest host for this special edition of our podcast. This is a mini-series specially for our incoming cohort of students who will be joining us in the fall. This is the Road to Orientation. We have two veteran guests returning to the podcast today. We have Associate Director Gretchen Ludwig and Assistant Director of Academic Services Heather Werckle. So you're returning to the podcast, so I have a different intro question for you this time. Can you just tell us a little bit, if you both have gone to grad school, tell us something maybe unexpected that you learned in your own grad school journey?
Hi, everyone. My name is Gretchen Ludwig. I am the Associate Director of Comm Lead, one of the Associate Directors, and my job is with Faculty Affairs and Curriculum. So my job is to ensure we have the classes that are offered and the instructors to teach them, and I have the best job at Comm Lead, and I'm not biased or anything. I went to grad school late in life. I went to grad school in my 40s when I had two children and I was working a full-time job. I like to actually mention that sometimes to students who are coming back to grad school a little later and they think that they're the oldest person in the room. They're not. What I learned from my own experience is that I loved my experience, I think because I was very fortunate in that I was able to really dig in deep to any class I was taking. And when you just take a class and experience it very deeply and you are connecting it to things in your life, your work, the things you've been thinking about, I always felt like the class I was taking was the class I needed to be taking at that moment. And I don't think it was because the universe deigned it that way. I think it's because I was making it relevant for myself. So that's what I would recommend to everyone. Just dig in deep to what you're doing and show up and engage. Students who take too many classes, and Heather will tell you this too, don't have that opportunity to engage deeply, and they regret it doing that.
All right. Hi, I'm Heather Werckle. I'm the Assistant Director of Academic Services, and that means that I am your academic advisor while you're in the program. So I help students with your degree requirements, class registration, making sure you meet all of those policies on the way to graduation. I've actually been in 3 grad programs. So that would be like my first thing I would say is, I went to grad school straight out of undergrad and that was the wrong degree. And so I ended up having to go back to school. And so that was something learned for sure. But when I think back on the master's degree I got that's relevant to my current field, it was almost 20 years ago. And what I remember the most are the people. Those connections that I made. I may not remember the specific theories we studied in a class because it was a long time ago, but I'm still friends with some of the people I went to grad school with, and we stay in touch and we're still working in the field together. And those connections, that community is probably the biggest thing I gained outside of the content knowledge, was just having those people in my corner and those colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that, just the experience of learning together with people is so powerful and so valuable.
The thing I learned in my program that I think is the same here is that faculty want to or delight in your learning. That's why they're there, right? They want to engage with you and learn with you. And if you're really passionate about something or you want to approach something in a certain way, maybe you want to use a different tool, or maybe you've got this idea. Generally, they're fully on board with that because they want to learn with you on what you're doing. So you have an opportunity to engage in ways that, like, if you have a vision or you have you have a desire to approach your final project in a certain way, you'll get a lot of support for that.
That is so true. And as a faculty member, I absolutely love when students come to me with like, hey, this isn't exactly how you describe the assignment, but can I experiment with X in this project? And I'm almost always going to say yes, because it's so true. I'm here for the students learning. That's the whole point of this thing. And so I absolutely love hearing that. And I think that transitions us so well into what we're here to talk about today, which is the classes. we've talked, about some of the other resources and other aspects of the grad student experience, but like which classes you're taking are a pretty central part of the degree and your experience. And we offer so many cool classes, if I may say, here in this program. So, I mean, starting at just like a high level, how do you do that? How do you decide, how to choose which class to take when, especially as a new student looking at your first year in Comm Lead?
Yeah, for our new students, your first couple of quarters, people seem to not believe me, but I stress all the time, you really can't go wrong, especially your first quarter where you're only taking one elective with the required core class. Anything you choose is valid. Anything you choose is going to apply towards your degree. So follow your passions, read the descriptions, see what looks interesting to you. That's another thing is that choosing classes that are really interesting to you, you're going to get more out of that class and you're going to put more into that class rather than taking something you feel like you should take that you're not very into. Like I took a statistics class in my grad program. I had to take it. I was not interested in it. And that was one of the hardest classes I ever took, not because of the content, but because of the motivation. So having those classes that really strike something for you, that spark interest, I think focusing on that your first couple of quarters, you'll learn what you want to go down the path towards for the rest of the program.
It's so funny. I have to say, Heather, this sounds exactly like what I say to my storytelling students throughout the quarter about the stories that they choose. It's like such a pervasive challenge for all of us just as human beings of the like trying to not do what we think we're supposed to do and actually learning to trust our interests, our passions, our tastes, and pursue the classes that spark that interest or passion, pursue, in a storytelling class or in choosing what to do projects within classes about, like what feels interesting to you. Like there can be so much overlap between those passions and your academic work. What do you think about this, Gretchen?
It's such a big question, about what I should take because we have so many great classes. Students get into this trap of the FOMO trap, like, oh, if I don't take this class, my career is over. I won't be able to. Heather hears this all the time. Desperation. And I always say, grad school is what you put into it. And you can't go wrong. You could have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. And any of those classes in your plan, you will get so much out of if you put yourself into it and really think about ways you want to engage in it. Going back to this, what class should I take? It goes back to, well, all these other students are taking this class. This one should be the class I take. Or, oh, this class has a career in the title and that's the career I want. So therefore, this is the class I should be taking. And it's a very sort of linear way of looking how to approach your graduate degree. What you should be thinking about more than anything else are the relationships that you're going to build with your instructors and your peers and the guest artists and guest speakers who come to your class, and how you choose to engage in the class, show up, and how you're going to do the work in the class. Because when you get out in the world, you're going to be telling these stories. And the story should not be, well, I took a UX class and I want to be a UX designer. Do you have any jobs for me? That's not a good story. A story is a story of the work that you did, why you did it, how you approached a problem, and how you want to sort of enact change in the world.
Oh, that's so powerful. That's so, so true. And it's hard to learn how to tell those stories about what you learned and like sort of dig deeper into what you're getting out of that experience. But I really, really love the way you both are reflecting on this. But I'm curious to sort of stick on this, the urgency that can crop up a little bit, because I know it's difficult, right? There are definitely a number of classes that are in super high demand. It can be really anxiety inducing to sort of feel like you're competing to get into classes. Like, what do you think? What's the best way to manage that? Or what are some tools and strategies for approaching that?
Yeah, one thing I will say is that the most high demand classes tend to be offered multiple times a year. So if you don't get into it the first time, don't worry. don't panic. That just means less people will be trying to get into it next time. So every time it's offered, you have a greater and greater chance of being able to take that class. So looking at that kind of long-term view of this class is going to come up again. You don't have to take it right now. You can take it later. And also thinking about, as Gretchen said, it's not necessarily about the title. What are you doing in classes? So maybe you didn't get into a particular class with a title you were interested in, but as we discussed earlier, maybe you can talk to the instructor of a class that's in a slightly different area and say, hey, I want to learn about this software or this skill. Can my final project be connected to that in the topic of this class? So you can add those skills in multiple different classes. So it's not necessarily just because you didn't get into this specific class doesn't mean you can't work on that skill in the class you did take.
Yeah, I want to go back to what Heather said about, and what you said, Jessica, about, pursuing your interest in class, because some of the greatest projects that have come out of Comm Lead are those that started in a class and then continued on to an independent study. And it's because the student discovered something in class through the process that they want to go in deeper. Sometimes students will come to me and say, I want to do an independent study, but it's for a different purpose, like, well, because I think I should do one, or it's because I think I want to go to this other grad school, but they don't even have an idea of what they want to do. That's not an independent study. We have so many classes you could take. It's usually the ones that start, maybe they start a story in your class, Jessica, and they start like a pilot episode for a podcast. They're like, you know what, I want to keep doing this. And then they go on to do more episodes with an independent study with you. And then they end up, showcasing it at Screen Summit. And it's like, yes, that is cool.
Well, I'm curious. So I think this is not critique of other grad programs.
Sure, go ahead.
But, I did an MBA. That's what I did for grad school. And I feel like it's like a pretty set curriculum. They'll like throw in entrepreneurship or something at the end as an elective, but it's like MBA programs are like pretty standard. It's like you take these classes, and it was great. I learned so much. I'm so glad that I did it. Something that I think is very different about that to what I see in Comm Lead is just like, not only the variety of classes and flexibility, but also just how it's constantly changing and growing. And so I'm curious, like, how does that happen? Like, how do you figure out what new classes to teach? Like, what does faculty recruitment look like? What's all that?
There's a lot of factors that go into how we shape our curriculum, which, as Jessica said, is very emergent. So faculty who teach in our program are working professionals by and large. They are senior leaders in their field. They come to their classes with, these fantastic guest speakers, their colleagues from various organizations. They have new techniques. They will bring things to us first and do experiments in their class that then will turn into something else. Just to give you an example, Jason Levine, who teaches our 512 UX research and also advanced UX studio class, which has become pretty popular, just came to me the other day and said, I am really thinking about building AI agents in my class. Can I pivot towards that? And then I will have that conversation with him. Does this make sense? Does this make sense for our students? Students will tell us what they're looking for. And we then take that need, the student need for what they're looking for, that's generally often connected to what they're seeing in the world in terms of the roles that are offered. And then I'll connect it to what instructors I have, how we can pivot those classes, and how we can add new classes to our curriculum to answer that need, but also with the vision of Comm Lead in mind. Is this a Comm Lead class? Does it exist within the curriculum? Is this how we want to shape our future communication leaders? Is this not just in response to, like right now, there's this role in the world, we should have a class on this role? That is not how we see our program, because our program are shaping people for a lifetime of career pivots, and which is what they're going to see. And going back to your point, Jessica, about what you were saying about the MBA being really prescriptive, like you have to take these classes. There's some relief in certainty, right? Mm-hmm. Like I wish someone just told me what I should take, right? But guess what life is? No one tells you that. You have to dig in deep to what you're doing to find the next avenue that you're going to go down. And so this is really good experience in doing that. And you'll have a great time along the way.
Well, I'm curious to ask, if I'm imagining myself as a new comm lead student, how should I be thinking about my academic program? Sort of how much should I be thinking big picture? How often do I sort of have to toggle back and forth and like check in on the big picture progress versus just like what's catching my eye this quarter when it's time to register?
And I think part of that comes down to the kind of curricular planning process at UW and the timeline for that. So every year I have, a few students reach out before they've even registered for their fall classes wanting to plan out their entire degree. Like, I want to meet with you and figure out which classes I'm going to take for the next 2 years. And I'm sorry you can't do that because we don't even know what's being offered in winter quarter yet. The planning process, partly because our faculty are all, industry professionals, they have full-time jobs, and they teach for us a few times a year. They can't necessarily commit to something a year in advance. So we build the schedule typically about 2 quarters in advance. And that's about how far out I feel like students should be looking. So I'll meet with students in October to look at winter quarter classes and maybe thinking ahead to spring. So for example, Gretchen had mentioned Jason Levine's Advanced UX Studio. If we're pretty sure that's going to be offered in spring and a student's interested in that, then winter I might suggest they take an intro UX class so they'll be qualified for that. So I think that kind of 2-quarter timeline makes sense just because that's when you know which classes are being offered, and it's hard to plan when you don't even know what the schedule is going to look like. But then thinking big picture in terms of what are the skills I want to be learning? What are the jobs I'm interested in, and what are they looking for, so that you can be thinking about that as you're choosing those quarter-to-quarter classes and making sure you're filling in those gaps.
I mean, it's with our degree, as you said, it's pretty flexible in terms of how you can meet your requirements. So, I'm sure Heather has this conversation with students where it's like, don't just take every class in your specialization. Say you want to be a digital marketer. Don't just spend your time taking all the digital marketing classes. Take a class in storytelling. Take a class in UX. These are all classes that are creating a well-rounded communication professional. Take a class you're curious about, but you know nothing about. That's really the approach I would take. Think about, how does this meet this requirement? Great. I can check that off, but I'm also, exploring something new. Something I don't know about. I do think, like, when I have conversations with students, I think students are really thoughtful about this in general. And they are thinking about like all the requirements that they need. But sometimes they need a little nudge, like, well, I'm thinking about this class, but I don't know. Should I take it? And I love to have that conversation because I have sometimes I've got some insider knowledge about like some things that they might want to, think about doing it. We have syllabi we can send students so they can know what to expect. So yeah.
I think that we've covered most of what we wanted to talk about in terms of just planning your degree and choosing your classes. But I want to ask you both, like, what haven't we talked about, or what are the most important pieces of advice that you have for students related to this?
Yeah, I would say pay attention to your credit load. We get a lot of students who they're coming from undergrad or they're coming from a semester school. And when they hear they're only supposed to take 10 credits or 2 classes per quarter, it sounds wrong to them. It is correct. That is how many credits you should take. At the University of Washington, 10 credits is full-time graduate status. So that's 100%. FTE, your full-time status. And one of the things that I think a lot of students don't think about when they're like, but maybe I could do more credits, I could handle more, I'm used to more, are all of the out-of-classroom opportunities, all of those networking events, the opportunity to work with the Comm Lead consultancy, which is an amazing resource that we have and a way to apply your skills. Thinking ahead to internships and doing those alongside your classes, independent studies, as we brought up. There's so many things outside of just the classes you're taking that add to your grad school experience. And if you take too many credits, if you overload above that 10 credits, you'll have a really hard time participating in all of those other opportunities. So thinking about that balance while you're in the program. And also because we always offer new classes, if you speed through too quickly, you're going to miss out and you're not going to be able to take some really exciting classes that might come up the next year.
Oh, that's great advice. Thank you. Yeah. Well, we're almost at the end of our episode for today. So I want to ask just one final question of you both, which is, looking forward to orientation, looking forward to this fall quarter. What's one thing you have to share with students to look forward to for this upcoming academic year?
Yeah, I will say if today's podcast has inspired you to start degree planning, to start thinking about the classes you're interested in, you can look forward to our small group advising sessions that are coming up in October, where you'll get to meet with staff, you'll get to make some of those connections we've been talking about, and start planning ahead for what you want to get out of this degree. So stay tuned for those.
I would say look forward to all the opportunities that are going to be presented to you for getting together socially and networking events. Know that the staff will be there with big smiles on, really excited when you come up to us to introduce yourself and to connect. We're very friendly and we always love meeting students.
Thank you both, Gretchen and Heather, for joining me on this special episode of Leading the Way today, part of the Road to Orientation mini-series. I can't wait to see you both at orientation. Can't wait to see our new incoming cohort at orientation. Thank you all so much for listening to Leading the Way. Please make sure to subscribe to our feed on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll be back with more episodes soon. We'll see you next time on Leading the Way.